Hello everyone and welcome to a very nice game you guys requested. It's from round 2 of this year's Sharjah Masters and it is a pretty big upset. One of the reasons why you guys requested it. It is world number 20 Vidit Santosh Gujrathi versus women's world champion Wenjun. You can see there's quite a bit of a rating difference, almost 200 rating points, and in terms of starting points in the tournament, for example, Vidit is seed number 3. Only ones rated higher than him are Gukesh and Parham Maksulu, and Wenjun is seed number 70. So that being said, let's check out the game and how well the women's world champion Wenjun played this game. So Vidit has the white pieces and he opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to c4. We have bishop to c5, and I know what you guys are thinking, but no, it is not that time just yet. We have pawn to d3, and now knight to f6. So the standard Giuoco Pianissimo. We have castles and pawn to d6. We have pawn to c3. We have a6 now. Pawn to a4 and h6. So pretty standard stuff here. Rook to e1, and now Wenjun just castles. Sometimes I will mention this in a position of this sort, that knight to g4, although you can play this now that rook f to e1 has been played, because the f-pawn is being threatened, but rook e2 is perfectly fine for white. You don't have to worry about this. Next move, whatever black plays, you're just gonna kick away the knight, and once the knight moves, you can go b4 and just go on with your business. You don't really care about this. You don't have to worry about bishop g4, so the rook is actually very nicely placed on e1. Later on, you can easily just double up. So it's not a problem, and no one will ever play knight to g4, of course, until someone does. So here we have rook to we have castles, pawn to h3, now stopping the bishop g4, and bishop to a7. We have knight b to d2, and she goes for bishop to e6. Vidit just trades here. We have bishop captures, pawn captures, and now pawn to b4, as one always should. We have knight to h5 now. And look at this position now. Of course, white has very nice expansion on the queen side, very nice central control, but look at the bishop here. Look at the rook here. The queen is coming to f6. Then you will maybe even double up or triple up on the f file. The knight is coming to f4. It just doesn't seem like something one should prefer playing over, let's say, something like the Evans Gambit. But okay, we have knight to f1, we have queen to f6, and now rook to a2. A very nice move. The rook will now serve as a defender of the f2 pawn, so the knight maybe can even move. Knight to f4, and now king to h2. This still is a known position. For example, a certain game from 2019 from the World Blitz champion reached this exact same position. Maxim Vachier-Lagrave drew his game against Vladimir Kramnik, but here we have king to h2 by Vidit, and now there are a couple of moves that reach this position, but here we have rook to f7, and it is now as of move 15 that we have a completely new game. So here he continues with pawn to b5, knight to e7, and now b captures on a6. We have b captures on a6, and now bishop to e3, offering a trade of bishops, and she declines. She just plays pawn to c5, and only now that this diagonal has been closed, Vidit plays bishop captures on f4. We have queen captures on f4 with check, king to h1, and now queen back to f6. We have knight to e3, now with ideas of maybe knight to c4 or even knight to g4, and just knight to g6. Now the other knight is coming to f4, and while you could play knight to g4, it looks very nice. It just once the queen moves, the knight really serves no purpose on g4. So instead we have rook to b2, nicely controlling the b file while also keeping an eye on that f2 pawn. And here just rook 8 to f8, nicely tripling up on the f file. We have knight to g1, and now here we have queen to g5. The queen moves out of the way, so you can now actually capture on f2. So how can Vidit stop rook captures on f2? Well, one way to do it, and it seems like a pretty reasonable thing to do, is pawn to f3. But the problem with pawn to f3 is this pawn to c4 move. Now the knight is hanging, and how do you defend this? You can play knight captures on c4, but then pawn to d5 comes, and once the knight moves, then you have to deal with ideas like bishop to e3, bishop to f4, queen g3, some queen to h2 checkmate ideas. Looks very, very ugly for white. So instead, Vidit plays queen to g4. His idea is, okay, if queens get traded, the knight will also be defending on f2, but it doesn't look like it actually works, because the knight can just be kicked away and the f2 pawn will hang. So it seems that Vidit loses a pawn regardless of what he does. Now, you have to also consider, do you capture an f2 right away, or do you trade queens? The problem with capturing is that queen captures on e6 comes with check. For example, rook captures, queen captures on e6 check, king h7, and now rook b7, and all of a sudden you have a very double-edged game. Doesn't look like something you want to play. So instead, after this queen to g4 move, Wenjun just trades. Queen captures on g4. We have knight captures on g4. Okay, the pawn is defended, but now pawn to h5, just kicking away the defender of the f2 pawn. So knight back to e3, and the rook captures on f2. We have rook to b7. Yeah, so Vidit trades the pawn for some activity for his rook, but his other pieces aren't very active to complement the rook on b7. We have rook to back to f7. You have to defend the bishop here, and now he trades. Rook captures, king captures, and now knight to c4. Now the knight is going after the d6 pawn, and king to e7 nicely defends that. We have knight to f3, and now knight to f4, going after the d3 pawn as well. And Vidit's position is just incredibly difficult to play. Now he should probably play something like rook to e3, sort of a passive defense, defend the d3 pawn this way, or try to go for rook to b1, to go for an active defense with rook to b1, followed with rook to b7. But he plays pawn to g3, and now it's just weird. She does have the option of capturing this pawn, then he can get his king into the game, or she can capture the pawn on d3. She captures the pawn on d3, and okay, rook to e3. You can't go rook to d1. It seems like you could, then the knight moves, you can capture on d6. The problem is if you go here, then just knight to f2 check, and you've blundered the rook. So here, Vidit goes rook to e3. Now comes knight to c1 and king to g2. The king now comes into the game. We have bishop to b8, also adding a defender to the d6 pawn. Plus, if you get the bishop to c7, you will very nicely be controlling this knight on c4. We have rook to e1, and now comes knight to a2, going after the c3 pawn, and there's really no good way of defending that pawn other than putting the rook to e3. But Vidit really doesn't want to put his rook on e3. He goes rook to b1, an active way of defending. Rook to b7 check is coming, and the idea is, yes, if you capture on c3, then rook to b7 check, and now after king to f6, something like knight to b6, maybe with ideas of rook captures here, followed by rook captures and knight to d7 with check, winning material. So while it's perfectly fine, you can still play king to g6 here. She decides to avoid all this by just playing bishop to c7, and okay, now Vidit skewers the bishop here. We have rook to b7, and now king to d7 defending. And now the problem is knight to g5. Now, how are you defending all of this? Again, there are threats of rook captures bishop, followed by knight captures on e6 with check. Well, it looks scary. It's really not. Wenjun is completely winning in this position, but you have to find a particular move. So feel free to pause the video and try to find the absolute best move for black here, while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting this very calm and, calm but active move. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is rook to b8. This is the move that solves all of her problems, and now you don't have to worry about falling for any sort of fork. Here, the problem is if you trade rook captures on b8, then just bishop captures, and once Vidit starts bringing the king into the game, you will lose the c3 pawn. There's no way to defend that pawn. And now, if you count the material, Wenjun is up 3 pawns. And of course 3 pawns is too much for anyone to handle, so Vidit has to avoid this. He plays rook to a7. Now okay, he's still keeping the bishop at bay, he's attacking the a6 pawn, but now just knight captures on c3. We have pawn to a5, defending the pawn from knight captures on a4, but now rook to b4, putting pressure on the knight, and also if the knight moves, then the e4 pawn will hang as well. So knight to b6 with check. Now at least he wins the e6 pawn. King to c6, and now knight captures on e6, going after the bishop here, but now the bishop did a sufficient job defending. The bishop will now be traded for a knight. Bishop captures, trading down. A captures, we have king captures on b6, and now rook captures on g7. She captures on e4, knight captures on e4, king to f3, and now pawn to d5. Just defending here, and now you can see those pawns are starting to march forward. Best thing to do here would be just to resign. Vidit will continue for a few more moves. Rook to g6, now rook to b3 check. We have king to g2, rook to b2 check, king f3, now even rook to f2 with check, king to e3, and now of course rook to f6, stopping any and all counterplay. Now you have to trade here. Vidit decides to trade with knight to f8, so just rook captures on g6, knight captures on g6, and even knight captures on g3. So grabbing all of the material, knight captures on e5, and just pawn to a5. And he was in this position on move 51 that Vidit Gujrathi resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. You are down 3 pawns, and it's merely a matter of advancing those pawns. There's really no counterplay here, and of course it would be crazy to continue playing this. So really an interesting game. She absolutely demolished him, and by the time I'm making this video, only her, Wenjun, and Pragnananda are on 2 out of 2, so on 100% after 2 rounds. We'll see what happens in the rest of the tournament, but as I understand it, she's the only woman playing in the tournament, so it will be very interesting to see if she is able to continue playing at this level. It was pretty much a perfect game. Vidit did play a couple of fishy moves, but she really took advantage of them and just, won the game like it was nothing. So yeah, there we have it. Thank you for suggesting it. First game that we are covering from the 6th edition of the Sharjah Masters. We'll see what happens in the rest of the tournament. And really, you have to wonder in this position. I mean, you've played c3, you went for the main line of the Giuoco Piano, and you've lost with white. I mean, maybe there are other moves one could consider here. But it's still too early. It's only 2023. I think maybe like in 2025, we will be discussing some other moves here. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Mazen Elsarag, Blake Terno, Peter Marinov, AMD Risen Enthusiast Group, and GolfSoftware.com for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this wonderful event and everything else that happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.